Hi, welcome to this video. I'm at a park, so there may be some background noise, so I hope you'll excuse that. But anyways, on June 13th at 12:43 p.m. Pacific time, there is a new moon in 22 degrees 44 seconds, or is it minutes? I always forget, of Gemini. And Mercury happens to be at 2 degrees 4 minutes of Cancer. So that's kind of interesting because of the 22:44 and the 2:4. So it's kind of, you know, got sort of a numerological octave thing going on there. And Venus recently created a kite, trining Jupiter in Scorpio and Neptune in Pisces. And then it was also opposite Pluto in Capricorn, and Venus was in Cancer. But on this day of the new moon, it moves into Leo and will conjunct the North Node. And yeah, so with the new moon being in Gemini, this is going to be sort of an expressive energy of your emotions. You'll be able to communicate your emotional state a lot easier. You'll be able to look at your emotions from a more detached point of view, and you'll be able to see where sometimes you can be too subjective. So like in situations when you're caught up in your emotions, sometimes you can get like really into that, and instead of looking at it objectively, you kind of react from an emotional perspective. Well, Gemini actually helps you to detach from the subjectivity of your emotions. So you'll be able to look at the things that, you know, your emotions from a more detached way, and you'll be able to communicate them a lot easier because of this without having that more reactive energy. And then Mercury being in 2 degrees of Cancer means that the moon and Mercury are actually in mutual reception right now. So Mercury will also be helping us to communicate our emotions from that objective perspective. And with Venus recently trining that kite, not trining the kite, but creating the kite, which is basically a Grand Trine with an opposition. So Venus, imagine Venus at the top of the triangle, and then down here is actually Pluto. So Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto. So what this has been doing has been basically creating a situation where any illusions are being looked at from a more real perspective, because Jupiter in Scorpio just wants the truth, and Neptune in Pisces can kind of like dance around the truth at times, or at least sweep it under the rug, or want to escape from the reality, or that kind of thing. But with with Venus opposite Pluto, this has been forcing us to face reality and the truth of a situation, and to kind of also come into contact with the shadow sides of your relationship. So things that you've been dancing around or sweeping under the rug may have come out into the light recently, and you've been having to look at those things and ultimately bring them into harmony because of the Grand Trine. So that's what's been happening for the last couple weeks approximately. Now that Venus is going to be moving into Leo, we're gonna have more fun. Yay! So we've had a little bit of a rough patch there, but it's gonna be more fun now that, you know, you've cleared the air and cleared your emotions, and we're able to face the deeper emotional state that you've been covering up at times. So that's kind of sometimes what can happen with these watery trines, is that you really come into contact with your emotions, and anything where the emotional thing hasn't been being faced is going to basically come to the surface. And so that's really what that's been about. whether or not you're in a relationship, you're gonna be, you know, you might have faced these things on your own even, but when you are in relationship with someone, then you're more likely to face them together. All right, anyways, but now that it's moving into Leo, it's gonna be conjunct the North Node. And so the path to the highest evolution and growth is actually to have more fun. And that's always just like something to look forward to, right? With Venus and Leo, it is a lot of fun. And if you have children, then you may be having more fun with your children, or at least exposing them to art and beauty and music and culture. So that could be a possibility with Venus being in Cancer, not in Cancer, but in Leo. Sorry, I was moving out of Cancer into Leo. But with Venus in Cancer, it can also be about family too. So, but it is a much more introverted sign with it being in Cancer. Now that it moves into Leo, you're going to be feeling a bit more extroverted. And that's not to say that, you know, all Cancers are introverted and all Leos are extroverted, but those are just, you know, because of the feminine sign to the masculine sign, that's kind of the energy that they bring. Because I've definitely known Cancers who were extroverted and Leos who were introverted. But, you know, anyways, I'm digressing a whole lot in this video, but we'll just go with it. By the way, you like this cool tree behind me? It's freaking awesome. I like it. And man, I wasn't even sure if you guys could see me right now. I'm just kidding. I just wanted to make that joke because I'm wearing camouflage. All right, anyways. Oh yeah. So Venus will also be opposite Mars and the South Node in Aquarius once it moves into Leo. And so there's going to be like this like tension kind of between the feminine and the masculine sides of your relationship. So like there may be some tension revolving around giving and receiving, or since it's in Leo and Aquarius, it could be about finding time between romance and possibly like group activities and friendship. And then also with Mars conjunct the South Node, this could be about facing ego issues and letting go of certain egotistical qualities within yourself, and especially around friendship as well. Like I think I've brought this up once with Mars and Aquarius, that sometimes with within groups of people, you will like kind of feed each other's egos. Like sometimes you find, you know, groups of friends that feed your ego, and so this is a time of actually letting go of that. Actually, I was talking about this with South Node in Aquarius, but now that Mars is conjunct the South Node, this is going to be coming up in a stronger way. So letting go of groups or friends that are actually inhibiting your growth because you are actually getting an ego boost because of those things. And so that's, and I also brought this up with the South Node Aquarius, some people may be leaving certain social media sites because of this, and other areas where like groups are feeding your ego. So you're definitely going to have to like become more objective about that and let go of that sort of scenario that feeds your ego, whatever it may be for you, because it, you know, of course, wherever Aquarius is in your chart may indicate where that tendency could be coming through as well. And so yeah, and then because Venus is conjunct the North Node, this is going to be bringing kind of a more evolved kind of love state forward. So this could be having us tap into like a higher love and a higher vibration, and, you know, having a good time, having fun, being playful, all those things, of course, we already know brings us to a higher vibration. So this will be easier for us to reach those higher states of consciousness and higher states of love and romance too. Okay, and meow. Sorry, I'm meowing right now. All right, and Mercury is sextile Uranus and Taurus. So Mercury in Cancer is sextile Uranus and Taurus. So with Mercury in Cancer, we already know that this helps us to kind of talk about our emotions more easily and look at our emotions in a more like kind of in a more mental kind of way, so that it kind of helps us to detach from them a little bit. And with it sextile Uranus and Taurus, this really helps us to become objective about these things. So things that are typically very subjective can be looked at more objectively. And actually, something I've been wanting to talk about with Uranus and Taurus is that this is a time when tradition can be, like innovations in tradition can occur. So, of course, you know, there's been a lot of stuff that are like that lately, with, you know, veganizing more traditional food. That's kind of an innovation in culture, in tradition. And then also, you know, there's been a lot of talk about cultural appropriation and like how people feel about that, and also how people are utilizing that. And so with cultural, like this is something me and my friend were really just talking about on the phone. It's all about how you do it, in my opinion. Like if you're doing it out of respect and are trying to honor something, then there's nothing wrong with it. But if you're doing it in a disrespectful way, obviously, you know, no matter what it is you're doing, if you're doing it in a disrespectful way, it's actually not right, right? But basically, this is a time when more innovation and creation around these traditional ways of doing things can be more like unifying, uniting. So because the world is coming together so much, so many different cultures and stuff, and there's a lot of different feelings around that. Some people feel like their culture is being erased, and that is the case in some cases. But in other cases, it's all about innovation. So, you know what's kind of interesting? All right, this is totally off topic in a way, but it's still on topic. But I do want to go here for a second. So, so I have some Native American in me. I have Chippewa Cree, but they mixed with the French people when the French people came over. So they kind of became their own culture called the Métis. So these, basically they made these carts, which is what the French way of being would be. And they also had like fiddles or violins, and they basically, and it was also Irish people too. So it was like French, Irish, and Native Americans mixing together and creating their own like innovative culture based on both traditions. So it was their own little thing going on, which was kind of cool. So that's what I think of with Uranus and Taurus, is like we'll be, you know, grabbing something from this culture, this culture, this culture, this culture, and kind of creating your own like thing that is the best of all worlds. And that's kind of how I see this Uranus and Taurus. So a few other things that I thought of in regards to like similar things is that we can actually be more objective about the values that we hold. So we'll be looking at ethics more objectively and talking about them in a more objective way. I think this is going to become a more universalized kind of way of looking at things. Like it's going to become more collectively conscious, like looking at the ethics of everything, you know, like what is ethical and what is not ethical. And also I think it has to do with the ecology as well, with Earth. So what is ethical to do to Earth, what is not ethical to do to Earth, what's ethical to do to, you know, animals even. I think Uranus and Taurus is actually going to bring more discussion around how we're treating animals and everything like that as well. And of course, how we're treating, you know, people as well, like the ethics of, you know, certain things that we do to each other. Yeah. So, and then there's a Grand Cross happening with Mercury in Cancer opposite Saturn, which is retrograde in Capricorn. And then they are squaring Chiron in Aries opposite MakeMake in Libra. So this is actually the first time I'm talking about MakeMake. I have been slow to add the newer planetoids or asteroids, dwarf planets, just because I wanted to like get to know them a bit more. But the interesting thing I think about these you know, smaller influences that are far away, like these Kuiper belt objects, I think what's interesting is many of them have been named after indigenous mythology. So the way I see that is that this indigenous consciousness is being brought into our collective awareness in a stronger way. And this has been very true, especially with Standing Rock and just more of this awareness around what has happened to the indigenous people and how things have happened. And, you know, I mean, this does kind of bring up that whole, you know, cultural appropriation thing where, you know, some people, you know, a lot of Native Americans have gotten upset at, you know, seeing white women wearing headdresses because that was typically a masculine, like the chiefs, the men chiefs were the ones who wore the headdresses. So they didn't like that. And that would be something where, you know, it's like a little bit, you know, where we need to kind of be more objective about it in some ways. Like, I think that those of us who adopt things from other cultures need to become aware of what they are before we go displaying ourselves wearing certain things, because I think that we need to be respectful, and I don't think that the people who do that are trying to be disrespectful. They are actually just being ignorant to it, which, you know, I can see why Native American people would get upset because they would feel like they were disrespecting them. And in some ways, by not looking into what something is or what something means, it's kind of a form of disrespect because you're not actually learning about what it is. So you know, my perspective is that, you know, if you are going to adopt something from a tradition, then it's important to educate yourself and know what it really means. But, you know, ultimately, you know, we should forgive those who make mistakes and who didn't know any better. So that's my balanced Libran perspective on that. Of course, MakeMake is in Libra. So anyways, with my throat's getting a little dry. Mercury opposite Saturn has been having us refine our thought process and also our emotions. And there have been maybe some sort of bouts of depression coming up for those, you know, who might be prone to that sort of thing. So there has been maybe some responsibility that is coming up as well that needs to be addressed, like certain responsibilities, duties, a feeling of needing to mature, especially because, well, Mercury in Cancer, well, Cancer can sometimes be very childlike. So the way many people describe it is it's got the child energy and the mother energy within it. So the need to be nurtured and also to nurture. With it opposite Saturn, it's like this sense of needing to grow up and mature and become more responsible and to become an adult. And especially for those of us who are going through our Saturn return right now, myself included, it's been kind of hard for me lately with the Saturn return going on. It's been like so heavy at times, but basically this need to grow up is really coming forward. Whether you're going through your Saturn return or not, Mercury opposite Saturn may be bringing that up collectively as well. And then Chiron opposite MakeMake, this is bringing up the wounds that have occurred, especially to the earth, I would say, because, all right, so I took some notes on MakeMake, and some of what Henry Seltzer said in the astrograph interpretation, he brought up like earth wisdom, inner wisdom, and integrating the feminine with the masculine, because basically MakeMake is the creator god of Easter Island. And what they used to have a competitive sport where they would go fetch a seabird egg and bring it back to the island unscathed. So they'd have to swim in the ocean to go get these eggs and then bring them back. And and whoever won, you know, basically got the honors of MakeMake. And I also, the other source where I got some of this information from was Midland School of Astrology.co.uk, and it was Alison Chester Lambert who wrote like a whole paper on it. But anyways, I wrote a bunch of notes. I don't know if I'm going to say all of them, but basically he's the creator god associated with fertility, competition, and abundance. And also like sexuality too, because the people on the island were very tuned into sexuality and were a bit more, I think, free with their sexuality. I don't know the details of that. It's just kind of the essence I got from the article. And so there's this very strong kind of combination of feminine and masculine in that, because of the, you know, reproductive sort of thing. It's both feminine and masculine, and also this inner kind of journey thing too. Like basically the way Henry Seltzer said on astrograph was because they were having to delve into the water to get their the egg, which is a sign of fertility as well. The whole like storyline there kind of does integrate that masculine and feminine thing. And then the way they see things in the world too, is the recognition of spirit being alongside them, and the recognition that everything is alive, even like the rocks and the plants, of course, and everything being alive. And it's also kind of like the male version. MakeMake is kind of like the male version of Mother Earth. So that's kind of the essence I got out of that as well. And then there's also this kind of ecological disaster association as well, because, so first of all, I guess one of the, like, somebody who was writing about Easter Island, I don't know very many of the details about it, but somebody had said that, or they, you know, claimed that the people of Easter Island destroyed their own island, and that's kind of something that was kind of stated at some point in time. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it was something that was kind of brought up. And then the other thing that is associated with the ecological disaster is that it's actually Easter Island itself is made up of 3 volcanoes on a fault line, and they say that the statues were actually buried and destroyed partially because of possibly earthquakes and tsunamis. So there's a lot of interesting sort of symbolism that could be associated with the times we're going through right now. I mean, there's been a lot of volcanic activity happening lately, and I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see more of it. Not that I want that to happen, obviously. And especially because of where I live, because I live near Mount Hood and Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens. So obviously that would not be ideal if that, you know, does happen. But anyway, the other cool thing, okay, so I was talking to my friend, right? And we were talking about how Polynesians and North Americans and South Americans have kind of integrated somehow through, you know, possibly by being seafaring people, they were able to meet up with each other at some point, whether it was on the West Coast or even possibly on Easter Island as well, because they found sweet potatoes on Easter Island, which are actually native to South America. And so it's crazy because I was just talking about that with my friend before I even looked this stuff up. So I feel like it was all kind of like meant to happen. But anyways, the other thing that they used to do on Easter Island was that they looked to the Pleiades to predict when to plant for the year, because during El Nino, they wouldn't, on the winter solstice, they wouldn't be able to see the brightness of the Pleiades as strongly due to the way the clouds were. So they were able to predict when El Nino was going to occur. Of course, it might not have been called El Nino at that time, but that actually helped them utilize the rainwater to its maximum potential, because there is actually no fresh water on Easter Island, so they relied fully on rainwater to survive. So it's pretty wild. But yeah, that's basically the notes I took about MakeMake, and it just might give you an idea of what kind of influence that could be bringing. And of course, with it being in Libra, Libra is about balance. So whatever's not in balance is being brought into balance. So this could be about bringing Native American culture, indigenous cultures back to the forefront, more connection with the earth back to the forefront, and ecological things could be occurring in order to bring the earth back into balance. And with it being opposite Chiron and Aries, this brings up the wounds that war has brought us, and that our egos have brought us. And so with this opposition, I think it's kind of about healing the wounds around war, and healing and bringing into balance the Native American and indigenous cultures, and bringing into balance the planet ultimately. So yeah, anyways, I know it was a bit long-winded today. I hope you enjoyed. Have an awesome time.